All right, so we got one I'm a little bit nervous to talk about because I feel like my take on this could be controversial. It might not be. Uh, Let me know what you think at the end of the video in the comments. So, this story that I have today is about a blind man who gets a license to carry permit to make a point about Indiana gun laws. So, first, let me clarify my stance on guns. So, for starters, I own a gun or guns. I'll leave that up to interpretation. Um, and I view them as a tool, which is what they are, a tool to protect yourself. I don't view them as something used for fun. Um, Guns are made to kill things, plain and simple, but that does not mean I'm anti gun. I just believe there should be common sense regulations with gun ownerships, comprehensive background checks, red flag laws, things like that. I'll be honest, in my ideal world, I wish that the civilian population wouldn't feel the need to carry guns. And but I recognize that as a country, that's just a given. We have more guns than people, and so I'm not some anti-gun or ban guns type of guy because I know that's just not what this country is about, and I accept that. But I would like to work around what I view as issues, and I view that in a lot of places you can get a gun way too easily. I think there should be universal background checks and red flag laws and just stuff to make sure the person getting the gun isn't going to harm someone. So, let's get into the article. So, this is from Wish TV, and it is Blind Man Gets License to Carry Permit to Make a Point About Indiana Gun Laws. So, a blind man is raising concerns about Indiana gun laws after he was allowed to get a license to carry a handgun. Terry Sutherland told iTeam 8 he got his permit to prove a point and to try to spark conversations about reasonable gun legislation. Sutherland was using his sightseeing stick when he went to the city council building to get fingerprinted for the permit. He said he spoke with several people who knew that he was blind. It just went very smoothly and normally, and nobody seemed to think anything about it. It was mind-boggling. It shocked me more than I expected. I thought at the last second somebody would go, wait a minute, and it would just not get approved. I'd get a letter that explained, listen, you can't aim a gun or put a bullet where it's supposed to, so we're not going to give you this permit, Sutherland said. That didn't happen. Now his license to carry permit sits in a lanyard around his neck. Sutherland is not against the Second Amendment. Before he lost his sight as a teenager, he learned how to safely use guns with his family, but he said being able to get his permit highlights a problem with Indiana's gun laws. His solution is something some states already do, requiring people to pass a competency test at a gun range before being allowed to carry a gun in public. I think competency with a lethal weapon is the bare minimum we can do, Sutherland said. I agree with that. Makes sense. Second Amendment advocate and lawyer Guy Relford challenged Sutherland's idea. We start putting government-imposed restrictions on constitutional rights. I always think that's dangerous and inappropriate. And that's not to say people shouldn't be trained, but society always functions better when people exercise personal responsibility and understand of their own volition that they need to be safe and responsible with that gun. To me, it's a bit of a ploy to go out and establish an argument for restricting constitutional rights where, by the way, we've had constitutional carry since 2022, Relford said. All right. That is the most overreactive take I think I've ever seen in my life. And the Second Amendment in America gets put on such a weird legal pedestal where conservatives and the like can just hide behind the Constitution and act like we've never put any restrictions or some kind of regulations on things in the Constitution. Look at free speech. Look at the First Amendment. All right. That's a pretty clear, plain idea that any speech in this country is protected. But obviously, you can't go online and make death threats. You can't harass people. And, um, any type of actual credible threat, which makes sense. I'm not against that. That's a regulation that makes sense. So what's a regulation on a gun law for someone to say pass a competency test, or hell, even a vision test from like a fucking doctor? Like, is that really controversial? Like, is that really that crazy that we can put restrictions on the First Amendment and no one really says anything? But the second we try to do anything for the Second Amendment, which in my opinion is even, it's plain face, it's more in favor of against what a lot of Second Amendment pro gun people believe. Like, I have it right here. I'm going to read it. A well regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So you can interpret that in a lot of ways. A well regulated militia. For one, you have regulation as the fucking third fucking word in the amendment. And it's almost like it could be interpreted as this is for militias of the state or state approved militias, however you want to dish it. So I don't know. Call me some fucking communist or radical left wing lunatic, but I'm just trying to point out why this lawyer's reaction to it is just stupid, in my opinion. So, anyways, he mentioned about constitutional carry. And so, constitutional carry allows anyone in Indiana over 18 to carry a gun in public, concealed or not, without a license. While Indiana residents do not need a permit to own or carry a gun, the license to carry allows Hoosiers? What the fuck is it? Hoosiers to carry in states that require firearm permits. What's a fucking Hoosier? Isn't that like a sports team? Or is that something we call people from Indiana? Someone let me know. What the fuck's a Hoosier? All right. Anyways, Sutherland said he just wants common sense gun laws that keep the public safe. If I can have a gun, why can't I have a driver's license? What's the worst thing that could happen? I could kill somebody with a car, Sutherland said. Sutherland sent letters to his representatives at the State House to see if they would talk about legislation, but he hasn't heard back from them. So, yeah, that's crazy to me. So, he's blind. He's blind. I'm not trying to discriminate against disabled people here, but I think it's okay to have regulations for things. We have regulations for the First Amendment. Why is it such a hot topic for regulations on the Second Amendment? And, a lot of people say that, well, it's because we need to keep the government in fucking place and blah, blah, blah. Well, it doesn't really say that in the amendment, that's the point of it. And two, the government is so fucking advanced nowadays that you and your fucking hunting rifle or even your AR-15 aren't going to do anything. I'm sorry. So back to my stance, I view guns as a tool, and they are meant to kill things, plain and simple. But that does not mean I'm anti-gun or that I want to ban guns. Hell, if I ran for office, I don't even know if like gun control and gun regulations would be like in my top 10 of things I would even address, because we have so much shit going on in this country. And I always go back to this, but I think solving root cause issues like healthcare, wages, inflation, and just giving everyone equal footing and financial security and just a fair shot at getting what used to be the American dream would end a lot of gun violence and stuff like that. So, yeah, I also want to look at a few things on Reddit. It's always fun to read reactions on Reddit. So, this is just about constitutional carry. His solution is something some states already do, requiring people to pass a competency test at a gun range before being allowed to carry a gun in public. Blah, blah, blah. Bullseye. Not in his case. All right. All right. Here's where it gets a little interesting. He's got a point. However, the problem with competency tests is they can be easily manipulated to strip away rights from certain groups, like how in the South during the Jim Crow era, tests were used to prevent black people from voting. And I can definitely see some chud sheriff doing that to keep black people from arming themselves. Like, and there's more like that. So before I get into a long response, I get to the point that it sounds like they are just trying to make the result likely they are trying to make this just strip rights away from disabled people than anything else. So my response to these are like, I'm not talking about some just general law or regulation that says, hey, you need to come up with standards or some kind of competency test of your own volition to enforce gun regulations. No, like, you don't leave it up to interpretation. You say, this regulation states that you must I don't know how vision tests are. Like, your vision must be a certain degree before you can qualify to get a gun. And you would get that from a medical professional who has no bias or anything like that. Or like how other states do, which is a competency test at a shooting range or something like that. You just got to make the regulations or the law very plain face and not open to be abused. It's not that hard. So I think that's the main ones. If he was a cop, he'd have to aim at the barking. Jesus Christ. And then I started blasting. Poor guy using logic in a GOP world. I mean, okay, if Indiana's application is anything like the basic CCW license in my state, it doesn't ask you about any disabilities and requires no testing. It's a form that gets filled out and a background check is done and they mail you a card. Well, yeah, that's kind of his point. There should be something, a little more to it. And to the one comment, I don't want to... So, discriminating against him by denying his constitutional right to bear arms would violate the Americans with Disability Act. This is one of those cases in law that seems absurd, but is preferred outcome since it prevents the government from discriminating against other disabled persons. I go back to my point. If you make a law on this subject saying you make it very plain face, you need to pass a competency test at a firing range or you need to pass some sort of vision test. This isn't some ploy to attack the rights of disabled people. Yeah, like, I'm not trying to sound fucking anti-disabled people here. I'm just saying, in general, we should have some regulation on who get a gun. And I'm sorry, but if you are blind and need to go around using a seeing stick, you probably shouldn't have a gun. Like, I'm sorry if that's a hot take, but that's just my take. I also wanted to touch on the constitutional carry part of this is, yeah, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, that's also a part of the point, but getting that permit from Indiana also will allow him to, use a firearm and own a gun in other states that require a permit and may have more, just more regulations in general. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm very interested because this is just, it's a weird issue. Second Amendment issues are always weird. Very touchy. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and I will see you in the next one. If you made it to this point in the video, I just want to give a special thank you. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button down below. And if you really enjoyed it, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button while you're down there. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I will try to reply to any and all comments that I can. Until next time, watch that video on screen.